Hello everyone, my name is Francis and welcome to the Iron Bars, my true crime YouTube channel. So today's case takes us to a small township of North of Pretoria called Hammanskraal. And it is a solved case of the disappearance and murder of Francis Rasuge. The interesting part about this case is that it sets a very important precedent regarding prosecution without a body, as well as a guilty verdict without a body. So without further ado, let's get into today's case. So this is the case of the disappearance and murder of Francis Rasuge. So Francis Rasuge was born on the 10th of June 1977, making her a Gemini. So Francis Rasuge was known to have friends as well as a family, to be very kind. She was a quiet girl as well as quite intelligent at school. Even her own teachers described her as a very well-behaved child but stubborn. The reason why she would be stubborn was because of the things that she believed in. You could not move her or shake her in anything that she believed in, especially when it came to humanity. So as a result of that, Francis Rasuge became a leader in her own right in her high school. Even in primary school, she was known to always take charge whenever there was some lack of leadership. And Francis Rasuge was also known to be polite and kind, and she treated everybody the same way, irrespective of your background or your status at home and things of that nature. Francis Rasuge, like all teenage girls, had dreams of becoming either a doctor. Sometimes she would change and say she wants to be a lawyer. Sometimes she would change and say she's going to be a businesswoman. Never in her wildest dream did she ever think that she was going to become a police officer. Francis Rasuge's parents described her as kind and a child that never caused any trouble in the house. Francis Rasuge was one of 4 children to William and Caroline Rasuge. Francis Rasuge was a twin. She had a twin sister by the name of Wilhelmina, as well as a brother by the name of Edward and another sister by the name of Nina. Like a typical black South African family, the Rasuge siblings, even when they were adults, they continued to live at home with their parents. In the black community, we don't have that when you turn 18, leave the house. Usually our parents are the ones that will say, no, nobody leaves the house. You will leave the house the day you get married. That is, if you ever get married. The Rasuge family were a very close-knit family, especially Wilhelmina and her twin sister, which is basically a typical thing for twins to do. And they shared a room and they talked about absolutely everything to each other. Whatever is going on in their lives, they talked about it. However, there was a family policy that whenever anybody goes somewhere, they need to let the family know where they are going to. Edward at one point said, even though he does know what is going on in his siblings' life, but whenever it came to their relationships, he would not interfere because he felt that it was none of his business. So in 1998, around where Francis Rasuge was either in grade 10, 11, or in matric, where she met a 35-year-old man by the name of William Nkuna. William Nkuna was a married man with 2 children. It is said that William Nkuna would lure girls because he had money. And for some reason, girls will fall for him. Unfortunately, one of those girls happened to be Francis Rasuge. So now, one thing that you need to understand about the South African criminal law, if you are involved in a relationship, a romantic relationship with a minor, that is statutory rape, especially when you are sleeping with that minor. Even if you are not sleeping with a minor, what are you doing having a relationship with a minor? So this is, of course, a red flag if you are thinking about it. A 35-year-old man going and having a romantic relationship with a school child who is still a minor. So when Francis Rasuge finished school or graduated from high school, she went and enrolled herself with the police academy. The reason why she applied to become a policewoman was because in South Africa at the time, jobs were scarce, and the only jobs that seemed to come through was the South African Police Service recruiting new policewomen and men. And so she felt that in order for her to have a job, in the meantime, it's best that she becomes a police officer. Maybe the money she will be earning from her police work, she is going to do part-time study at UNISA and study towards whatever she wanted, whatever she had decided to become. I think she wanted to become a lawyer. But anyways, Francis Rasuge passed the police academy with flying colors, and she became a police constable. The thing about Francis Rasuge and William Nkuna's relationship was a bit bad relationship. It was very unhealthy. They fought all the time. Although William Nkuna showed some machismo and he showed that he was a man's man, he struggled with one thing and one thing only: jealousy. He hated it whenever Francis Rasuge was being spoken to by other boys. That also includes her own classmates. And it turns out William Nkuna would get so jealous, so much so that he would even beat Francis Rasuge for speaking to her male classmates. It is said that William Nkuna will be so jealous that even if a man dared to look in her direction, he would beat her up. That a man looked at her and then you're like, something is not right with this man, clearly. And that is a big red flag as far as I'm concerned. At this point, I'm not sure why Francis Rasuge did not see the man that he was and just leave him alone. However, Francis Rasuge, like with many other girls, she was financially independent on William Nkuna, and that is the reason why she stayed in the relationship. However, when Francis Rasuge became a police constable, that meant now that she is able to get a salary as a police officer. And William Nkuna hated that. He hated the fact that she was working and she was no longer dependent on him. William Nkuna was controlling Francis's life in every level, including taking her bank card as well as the ATM PIN number and in his possession, so that whenever she gets a salary, he can in and out of a bank account, even though William Nkuna was a wealthy man. Francis Rasuge's colleagues described her as very polite, hardworking, dedicated, and committed to her work. She ensured that the bad people were locked up. She made sure that they were prosecuted and convicted for the crimes that she had locked them up for. That means she was thorough in her investigation, working hand in hand with the detectives. Interestingly, one of her former classmates also became a police officer. She said she described Francis Rasuge as being surprised to see her as a police officer because Francis Rasuge was a beautiful woman whom in her head thought she was going to either become a lawyer or a beauty queen. That's how beautiful she was. She further said that Francis Rasuge, when they were recruited to this particular police station, Francis Rasuge was the only officer that welcomed them and was not teasing them and calling them freshers. So instead, she was showing them the ropes on how the police station works and where their officers were going to be, who is going to be their superior. She basically helped them out to settle in that police station. And for that, she felt that she was forever grateful to Francis Rasuge. So like I mentioned earlier, that William Nkuna is said to be a wealthy businessman. However, I tried to check and I really researched to check what business exactly did he do. And I could not come up with absolutely anything. And that got me wondering, so what exactly was he doing that made him rich? Because he had a house in Temba in Hammanskraal, and he also drove fancy cars. He dressed in designer wear, and he was a person that was very splashy or flashy, whichever way you want to call it. And people basically saw him as a wealthy man, but I could not find anything what made him rich. However, I did find out something. You're going to have to wait up until the end of this case because it does get revealed how William Nkuna gets his money. And it's not a business. Another thing about William Nkuna that I found extremely surprising was his wife. William Nkuna's wife knew of Francis Rasuge, and she had absolutely no problem with her husband having a relationship with Francis Rasuge. What could be the reason that she does not have a problem with her husband having a girlfriend outside of the marriage? So one of the few things that I thought about was probably William Nkuna had gone to the wife that, you know what, I am taking a second wife, basically a polygamous marriage. Now, a polygamous marriage in South Africa, it is protected by the Customary Marriage Act, which is also enshrined in the South African Constitution under customary law. However, there are some few things that a man who intends on taking a second wife, he needs to follow. And it varies from case to case. No polygamous marriage is the same in South Africa, and therefore, when the man applies to the High Court to marry a second wife, the cases are usually looked at upon their own merits. One of the things that the Customary Marriage Act that requires of a man is that he needs to seek permission from his first wife. The first wife needs to say, okay, I don't have a problem with you taking a second wife. Then he can go and apply to a high court to take a second wife. Again, there are some few conditions that he needs to meet in order for the court to grant him the permission to take a second wife. The second woman who is to be the second wife must also consent. Number two, she must also understand what she's getting herself into. If she does agree and she understands what she's getting herself into, that is when the court will grant the permission for the man to marry a second wife. So if it's not that, maybe the wife was afraid of William Nkuna. Remember, William Nkuna is a woman beater. Maybe she thought, finally he found somebody that he's going to beat on. No longer will he beat on me. As long as I am quiet and I'm obedient, whatever he tells me, I'm just going to do it. But make sure that that pressure that he gets, he takes it out on the second woman. Maybe that's one of the reasons. Or maybe she just didn't care. I don't know. I could not really find out why she did not have a problem with her husband having a girlfriend. Oh, I forgot to mention that if the first wife does refuse for her husband to take a second wife and he goes ahead anyways and marry a second woman, that marriage, it is null and void. It's not going to be recognized by customary law or by the Constitution. So nobody knows if William Nkuna had any intentions on taking Francis Rasuge as a second wife. So the relationship between Francis Rasuge and William Nkuna was on and off because William Nkuna had extreme case of jealousy whenever it came to men looking at Francis Rasuge. I don't understand this because it always happens that whenever you look at somebody, not because you are interested in them, and then the boyfriend will have a problem and start fighting you or start beating the woman that he purports to love. I don't get that. I really don't. Something is stupid about this. Francis Rasuge's family knew of William Nkuna, and they also knew that William Nkuna, he was being abusive to Francis, and there was nothing they could do about it because Francis Rasuge at this stage, she is now a grown woman and she can make her own decisions. However, Francis Rasuge seemed to be smitten by William Nkuna because every time they break up, she would be the one that goes back to him. And sometimes it was the other way around. And her family did not understand what hold did William Nkuna have over Francis. And they just did not understand it. Like I mentioned earlier, Edward Rasuge said he did not interfere in his sister's relationship because it was none of his business. And I said, I understand that. I really do. But if any man beats on my sister, trust me, no ways. It's not going to happen under my watch. And I'm not judging Edward Rasuge. I'm just saying. So let's start a timeline of how things turn out in this relationship, which leads us to today's case. So on the 31st of December 2003, William Nkuna and Francis Rasuge were preparing to celebrate the new year. So this is New Year's Eve of 2003. So while they were busy preparing for the new year, sometime just before midnight, Francis Rasuge and William Nkuna had a little bit of a fight. The fight escalated in such a way that William beat up Francis to a pulp. Francis Rasuge did not welcome 2004 in a very good condition. The following morning, the first thing that she did was to leave and go back home to her parents. When she got home, her mother, Caroline, was so shocked to see her daughter in that state. She could not help herself. She picked up the phone and called William Nkuna to ask him why did he do what he did to her daughter. Caroline Rasuge told William Nkuna that this relationship is unhealthy, and then she further told him, please stay away from my daughter. William Nkuna had the audacity to disrespect Caroline Rasuge by telling her that if his relationship with Francis broke up, he would murder Francis, and then he would turn around and commit suicide. That is when Caroline Rasuge was like, but that is stupid. You have children. What do you think is going to happen to your children if you are going to do something this stupid? To which William Nkuna responded and told Caroline that, hey, I have a wife and their mother is going to take care of them when I am gone. But one thing for sure that is going to happen, if Francis ever broke up with me, I will kill her, and then I will kill myself. Of course, Caroline Rasuge was very shocked and speechless from hearing what William Nkuna was telling her. However, Caroline Rasuge stood her ground and told William, leave my daughter alone. As far as I'm concerned, this relationship is over. At a later stage in court, William Nkuna denied that this conversation ever took place on the 1st of January 2004. However, William Nkuna did also tell several other people that he loves Francis so much that he is willing to kill for her or even kill her if she ever broke up with him. He also denied ever saying that to anybody. So it is still the 1st of January 2004 when William Nkuna blew up Francis's phone. He was sending texts, he was calling her, he was begging her to come back to him and that he was never going to do this again. He made a mistake, like all typical abusive men would say, and he was literally crying on the phone, begging Francis Rasuge to take him back. However, Francis ignored every text as well as a phone call because Francis's mother made sure that she did not respond to any of William's calls or text messages. She was really angry at what William had done to Francis. So 3 months later, after the incident on the 1st of January 2004, Francis Rasuge decided to just go on with her life, focus on her career as a police officer, as well as basically just being a lady that she was, enjoying her life, her family life that she was spending with them. However, William Nkuna made sure that he stalked her at every chance he got. He would try to call her, he would stop her on the road, he would even visit her at the police station, begging her to take him back. But Francis Rasuge stood her ground and said, no, it is over. So while she was trying to move on with her life, in March of 2004, Francis Rasuge meets a man by the name of Abner Ramasodi. They fall in love. However, Francis Rasuge was very afraid to tell her family about her new love by the name of Edna Ramasodi. She was afraid that her family would rebuke her to getting into a new relationship soon after she just broke up with William Nkuna. She felt that she was going to get judged or scolded by her mother and father as well as her other siblings. However, her twin sister Wilhelmina knew about this new man. Remember, they are twin sisters and they are close. They tell each other everything. So she was the only one in the family that knew that Francis had a new man. It is described that the relationship was a happy one. It was a very respectful relationship because Abner was very respectful towards Francis. He treated her like a lady because he was a gentleman. When Francis Rasuge got into the relationship with her ex-boyfriend, whose name is William Nkuna, is in the picture. But she, as far as she's concerned, she has broken up with him, but he would not relent. He keeps calling her, he keeps visiting her home, he keeps texting her. So now and again, he is going to see text messages as well as phone calls coming from Nkuna, who is basically bothering her. As far as Abner was concerned, he just knew of that situation and there was not much that he could do. All that he could say was he appreciated the fact that Francis told him about William Nkuna. In court, Abner Ramasodi told the court that he was quite surprised to hear that William Nkuna was still in the picture. The only problem with Abner and Francis's relationship, it was a long-distance relationship. Francis Rasuge would visit Ramasodi twice or three times a month to just basically be girlfriend and boyfriend. So during this relationship, William Nkuna did not leave Francis alone. He was wherever she was. On the 10th of May 2004, this is 1 month before her birthday, Francis Rasuge walks into a police station and opens a case of rape. She further opens a protection order against William Nkuna. The protection order was served on William Nkuna, who signed for it. However, William Nkuna, number one, he did deny that he ever raped Francis Rasuge. Number two, he denied that he ever signed a protection order against him from Francis Rasuge. He further said that the reason why Francis Rasuge opened a false case of rape as well as a protection order was because she was advised by people to do that as retribution. Now, this is the part that always gets me a little bit baffled. What is it that abusive men have over their victims? I don't get that. Because on the 26th of May, this is 16 days after Francis opened a rape case and filed for a protection order when she went and withdrew the rape case against William Nkuna. Guys, let's not forget this. Francis Rasuge is a police constable at this time. She should know better. However, as a policewoman, I'm just thinking, I'm not saying it is the fact, I'm just thinking, as a policewoman, she probably has seen many rape cases and also done many rape cases, and many of these rape cases that she saw basically would get thrown out in court and at the end of the day, the rape victim does not get the justice that they deserve. So she just did not want to put herself through the same thing, and hence she just decided, you know what, let me just drop this thing, which at the end of the day might even get thrown out of court. So I think maybe that might be one of the reasons. But I think William Nkuna, because abusive men, for some reason, they are so good with manipulating their victims. I think he made some sort of a promise to Francis, provided that she goes and drop the rape charges as well as the protection order. Because it does not make sense that she just went and dropped a rape case against a man that is pestering and bothering her, basically stalking her. So after the 26th of May 2004, it seemed that William Nkuna disappeared into thin air. He stopped bothering Francis Rasuge. He stopped coming to her home. He stopped calling her. He stopped texting her. Basically, all these activities that he has been doing since January the 1st up until the 26th of May 2004 has ceased. I'm thinking maybe that's the reason why Francis Rasuge went and dropped the charges, because he promised her that he's going to stop so that she can start enjoying her new relationship with Abner. However, that was short-lived, because in July of 2004, Francis Rasuge's family experienced a death in the family of a relative that lived in a Johannesburg township of Alexandra. However, the family could not travel from Mabato to Alexandra, so they needed a car to travel to Alexandra. That is when Francis Rasuge suggested to her family, especially her father, to call William Nkuna to borrow them one of his cars. William Rasuge, who happens to be Francis's father, then asked Francis to call William Nkuna to borrow them one of their cars, which I think that was a terrible mistake. They could have taken taxis to Alexandra if this funeral was that important. And William was so happy and glad that Francis called him, and he did not have any issue in borrowing the Rasuge one of his cars. And that was his way of getting back into Francis's life. Even though Francis made sure and clear to him that the relationship is still over and I still do not want you. All I wanted you to do from the kindness of your heart was to borrow us one of your cars so we are able to attend a family funeral. So William Nkuna then told Francis that since I did borrow you my car, the least that you can do as a thank you is to go out to lunch with me. So Francis Rasuge agreed. However, Francis took two of her siblings along with her for this lunch. It is said that William Nkuna was not happy when he saw that Francis came with her siblings. The siblings say the thing is, with Francis, she was very scared of William. She was still traumatized by what happened on the 1st of January 2004. After they were done with the lunch, Francis Rasuge and her siblings left William Nkuna, who looked very much unthrilled with everything that took place that particular day, because he had made all sorts of preparations. One of the preparations was to ask Francis to please forgive him and take him back. But he could not do that in the presence of her siblings. So Francis Rasuge and Abda Ramasodi's relationship continued. It was good and loving, and they were getting closer and closer to each other, to a point that Francis's brother found out about this Ramasodi man, who was Francis's new boyfriend. However, again, because he does not interfere in his siblings' relationships, he decided not to say anything, not even tell the parents about what he discovered. On the 25th of August 2004, Francis Rasuge walks into a furniture store called Russell's, where she buys 2 items of furniture to surprise her boyfriend. Basically, it was a gift to her boyfriend. Francis gave the furniture store the address where these items were to be dropped. Fortunately for her, the shop said they can drop the items the very same day. She was very excited about that. So the furniture indeed did arrive at Abner Ramasodi's house. However, Abner was still at work, therefore his neighbor did sign for the furniture. And the neighbor said later on that day, Francis did come to check if Abner had returned from work, and that was the first time she and Francis met, even though Ramasodi made sure that everybody knew that he found a beautiful girl that he's going to marry one day. He even told his own mother that, an entire family and the entire neighborhood. However, the neighborhood as well as the parents still had not seen Francis Rasuge. The neighbor said the first time that she met Francis Rasuge, she was so happy to see a beautiful, humble, polite woman. She said it was the last time that she saw Francis Rasuge. So when Abner returned from work, he found Francis waiting for him, and when he saw the 2 pieces of furniture, he was over the moon excited. Exactly what Francis wanted to see, his reaction. And of course, they both basically just hugged, and he was so grateful for this gift that his girlfriend had brought him. So William Nkuna, with the bad habits that would not die, he resumed his stalking of Francis because of the car that he had borrowed them to go to a funeral. So on the 26th of August 2004, William Nkuna was seen around Francis' home. Francis Rasuge's sister said when she saw William Nkuna just parked outside of her home, she was very annoyed. She says that she hated this man because of what he had done to her sister. So while they were celebrating the pieces of furniture that Francis Rasuge bought her boyfriend, Abner asked Francis if she could please accompany him to a family funeral which was going to be in another town. Francis said, "It's fine, I can accompany you to the funeral. However, I need to go back home so I can do my hair and prepare for the funeral." Abner was like, okay, it's fine. Then he accompanied her home. On the following day, which was the 27th of August 2004, Francis Rasuge woke up, prepared herself to go do her hair. Just when she was about to leave her home, she realized that she had forgotten to plug her phone to charge overnight. So she went to her brother Edward and said, "Hey guy, let's swap phones because I need to go and do my hair and I'm expecting some calls during the course of the day." Now Edward was not going anywhere, so he did not have a problem, so they swapped phones. And so that Francis' phone would be charging while she takes her brother's phone to the hair salon. That was the last time Edward Rasuge saw his cell phone. The next time he saw his cell phone, it was part of the evidence that was collected by the police. The hair salon owner, Desmond Mkhonto, said that Francis Rasuge was his longtime client. She always came to his salon to do her hair. He told the court that on the 27th of August 2004, Francis Rasuge did come to his salon where he straightened her hair and styled it to suit the occasion, which was the funeral of her boyfriend's family member of some sort. Francis Rasuge had shared to Desmond Mkhonto that she had a new boyfriend and that she was going to a funeral with him, so she wanted him to make her look really good. Because at the funeral, she is going to meet some of her boyfriend's family for the first time, so she wanted to look like umakoti, meaning a bride. So when it was time to pay for her hair, that is when Francis discovered that actually the hairstyle that she had done with Desmond actually cost just a little bit higher than the money she had brought with her. So she was a bit stuck for a second and she did not quite know who to call to come and help her pay off the balance. Desmond Mkhonto told the court that he was familiar with William Nkuna and that he recognizes him as the man that came to the salon that day of the 27th of August. And indeed, he was the man that settled the rest of the balance for Francis's hair. After paying for her hair, William Nkuna asked Francis where she was going. That is when Francis shared with William Nkuna that she was going to a funeral with her new boyfriend, Abner Ramasodi. This is the first time that William Nkuna finds out that Francis has a new man, and he did not like it at all. However, William Nkuna offered Francis a lift to the taxi rank so that she could get to the funeral the following day. I know what you are thinking, because I'm thinking it too. Don't. Unfortunately, Francis Rasuge agreed to get a lift from William. Desmond Mkhonto would tell the court that was the last time he saw his longtime client, Francis Rasuge. However, when it was time for Francis Rasuge to arrive at Abner's house, Abner had been waiting for her. She did not send a text. She did not call. She said nothing. And it was getting dark and he was getting very concerned that why his girlfriend, who knows very well that the following day they need to go to a funeral, but she was still not there. So he decided, okay, fine, let me start making my way towards the funeral, and basically left Francis behind. Abner, while he was going to the funeral town, he then decided to call one of Francis's siblings, I think it was the sister, to ask about Francis's whereabouts. He was expecting her to accompany him to the funeral. That is when Wilhelmina told Abner that they don't know where is Francis, because at this point in time, she should have returned from the hair salon. At the time of her disappearance, Francis Rasuge was 27 years old. So as you know, a 27-year-old can do as they please. They can go and sleep over at wherever they want to and with whomever they want to. But it was unusual of Francis Rasuge to just get up and go and do not communicate with anybody. Remember that the Rasuge has a policy that you must say where you are going so that it's easier for everybody to know that you are gone there and you are going to come back at this time. But Francis had done none of that. She did not text, she did not call and explain herself why she was late. So on the 29th of August 2004, Francis Rasuge's colleagues, they had come to pick her up for their shift. That is when they discovered that Francis has been missing since the 27th of August. Both the Rasuge and her colleagues started getting worried. That is when they knew that something was terribly wrong. Since Francis had started being a police officer, she has never missed a day without first talking to her superiors, letting them know how long she is going to be absent from work for and when she was going to return. So this was just uncharacteristic of Francis to just up and leave and disappear into thin air. So a discussion was held between Francis's colleagues as well as her parents. That is when William Rasuge called William Nkuna to ask about the whereabouts of her daughter. That is when William Nkuna told William Rasuge that the last time he saw Francis was when he drove her to the taxi rank at ShopRite. She was going back to Mabato, and from there she was going to a funeral with her new boyfriend. So he has no idea where she is. So with the advice of the colleagues, that is when the Rasuge opened a case of a missing person. So the first thing that the police did was to go to Desmond Mkhonto's salon if Francis did indeed come to the hair salon, and Desmond Mkhonto confirmed that indeed Francis Rasuge did come to his salon and he was the one who straightened and styled her hair, because she was going to a funeral the next day with her boyfriend. Desmond Mkhonto further told the court that that very day it was Nkuna who had drove off with Francis Rasuge. So the second thing that the police did was to track all the activities of the cell phone that Francis Rasuge was using on that day. Remember, this cell phone belongs to her brother. So they wanted to see where the cell phone is. Basically, it was pinging. And they found where the cell phone was pinging, and it was pinging at a shopping center in Hammanskraal. And indeed, they found the guy that had the cell phone, and then they arrested him. The gentleman who had Francis's brother's phone said that this phone was given to him from a man that sold it to him. They wanted to know who this man is, and therefore they took out a picture of the man and asked him, is this the guy that sold you the cell phone? And the man said, yes, this is the exact man that sold me this cell phone. That is when the police confiscated the cell phone and added it as part of the evidence. However, I did not find out what happened to that man. Here in South Africa, if you buy stolen goods, you will also get prosecuted for that. You are an enabler as well as an accomplice. I'm not quite sure which law that basically gets you arrested, but I think he was arrested and prosecuted for buying stolen cell phone or stolen property. So on the 30th of August 2004, William Nkuna was called by the police, and he was advised that he was a person of interest for the disappearance of Francis Rasuge. That is when William Nkuna said he would never do anything to Francis because she is the love of his life. He would not lay a finger on her, which is untrue because on January 1st, he beat her to a pulp. And secondly, he did threaten Caroline Rasuge that if there was ever a breakup between him and Francis, he was going to kill her and then kill himself. Clearly, the coward has not even taken his own life, let alone thought about it. The strange thing about William Nkuna, after finding out that Francis had disappeared, he never once called the Rasuge to find out any update about the disappearance of his so-called the love of my life. He never even helped the police to at least trace where Francis might be. He was just mum. So William Nkuna was summoned to the police station where they questioned him about the cell phone. That is when he told the police that, listen, Francis had actually borrowed him her phone because his own was broken. I don't think so. He further told the police that cell phone was actually stolen from him, so he has no idea what happened to that cell phone. He further told the police that the cell phone that Francis had given it to him was stolen from him by the man who claimed that he sold it to. So I don't think William Nkuna was thinking all that he was telling the police through, because everything was disproved by the police, because his own cell phone was seized from him by the police, and they discovered that his cell phone works perfectly fine. The police said that upon confiscating William's phone, it is said that he had made 89 calls from his own cell phone. Funny that this cell phone doesn't work, hence Francis had given him her own cell phone for him to use. And that's when the police told William that it does not make sense that Francis would just up and leave and disappear into thin air without telling anybody, especially members of her own family. And definitely it does not make sense that she would take that very communication tool and give it to him instead. William Nkuna shrugged off, and he did not have any words to say because he's just got caught out on his lies. So the third thing that the police did was to check Francis's bank records, and they ascertained that money was indeed withdrawn from her bank account after the 27th of August 2004. This is a day after she had disappeared. Money was withdrawn. So several withdrawals were made in the area totaling 1,200 rand. The fourth thing that the police did was to check the CCTV of the ATMs to see who is this person that was withdrawing money from Francis's bank account. They had hoped that it was Francis herself. Lo and behold, when they check the footage, they see a man wearing a distinctive shirt. And it was not Francis Rasuge who was making withdrawals from her bank account. The interesting part about this man who was wearing a distinctive shirt, because the CCTV footage was not clear, it could not clearly show who the person was. However, the body size and shape of the image in the footage was consistent with that of William Nkuna. When William Nkuna was questioned by the police, he did admit that indeed he had Francis's ATM card and he knew her PIN number. However, he denied that he was the one that was making withdrawals after the 27th of August 2004. On the 3rd of September 2004, a twist happens in this case. William Nkuna goes to the police station and opens a case of conspiracy to commit murder against Francis Rasuge and several of her colleagues. He says that Francis Rasuge and her colleagues were planning on killing him. However, at a later stage, William Nkuna went and withdrew Francis Rasuge's name on the list of police that wanted to kill him. However, you and I can see right through this plan, right? Because it comes in handy should he ever find himself on trial for the murder or disappearance of Francis Rasuge. On the 6th of September 2004, a search warrant is issued on William Nkuna to have his car searched by the police. The forensics opened the boot of his car and they took out a mat. However, there was one thing they did notice, that this car was clean immaculately. It was showing signs that something was being concealed. However, the carpet did show stains of blood, and they swabbed the blood and they took it to the lab, and the lab indeed confirmed that the blood spatter did belong to Francis Rasuge. William Nkuna explained it all away. He said that sometimes he and Francis, whenever they would have sex, they would use his boot mat to have sex on. And sometimes there was a time where she was menstruating and her blood spilled onto the carpet. So after making this discovery, the police then charged William Nkuna for the disappearance of Francis Rasuge. So with no evidence whatsoever except for that small splat of blood, as well as William being the last person to see Francis, then the police thought it was good enough to arrest and charge him for the disappearance of Francis Rasuge. However, if there was a body, this case would have been a slam dunk, but there was no body. Now, in South African criminal law, in order to secure a conviction, you need to prove your case beyond a reasonable doubt. But the first thing that you need to do is to provide evidence so that the court can apply the law on that evidence that is presented before it. And that evidence, if it is murder, it is the body, the murder weapon, as well as other evidence that indeed the person accused of this crime is guilty of murder. So there was no proof exactly whether Francis Rasuge was even dead to begin with. For all they know, Francis Rasuge decided, you know what, I've had enough, and decided to run away and start a new life. But it is highly unlikely that a woman of Francis Rasuge's stature would just drop everything and disappear into thin air. That is unlike her. She has a family that loves her. She's got people that she loves, and she has a new boyfriend that she's involved in a loving relationship with. Why would she just drop everything and disappear into thin air? So it did not make any sense whatsoever. So the National Prosecuting Authority found themselves with a no-body prosecution conundrum. They were checking every angle on how they are going to prosecute and have a successful conviction on William Nkuna for the murder of Francis Rasuge. One thing they knew for sure, they wanted a larger pool of blood so that they could call an expert in court who would testify in court that no human being will survive that amount of blood loss. So the state then decided that they are going to go with the missing dead theory in court. So at this stage, it is showing that if Nkuna did kill Francis Rasuge, he got away with murder. Or at least that's what he thought. Unfortunately, the blood that was found in his case was not sufficient to secure a conviction for a loss of life. However, the blood that was found in William Nkuna's car was enough to make people think that Francis Rasuge was no longer alive. So victimology is a best strategy to go to court with this case. Now, I looked up what is victimology, and this is what victimology is about. So these are the things that they will look at. If the victim in question is reliable, loyal, lives a low-risk lifestyle, and has no history of disappearing on their own like Francis, then it is much easy to show if they go missing. A person like Francis Rasuge, victimology makes a lot of sense to present in court so that the court will consider the fact that Francis Rasuge was not a high-risk person in her lifestyle. However, the state needed to make sure that the court understood that William Nkuna knew exactly that Francis Rasuge was no longer coming back home. After William's arrest, some people said that he had admitted to them that Francis Rasuge was no longer coming home because he had killed her. He basically reminded them that, remember, I told you that if Francis ever broke up with me, I would kill her. And people were basically saying that. Another thing that I forgot to mention was that in Temba, Hammanskraal, people were terrified of him. They feared him. Now, as far as I'm concerned, many business people are respected, not feared. So why are people fearful of William Nkuna? Stay tuned and you will find out, because I do discover why people are so terrified of William Nkuna. William Nkuna further said that the reason why the police will never find Francis Rasuge's body is because he and his traditional healer, Phineas Kudumela, had dismembered Francis Rasuge's body and used parts of her body for muti, and the rest was thrown away. Now, muti, it is voodoo or juju, I don't know what you call it. Many traditional healers, I'm not sure if you understand what a traditional healer is. I'm not sure how to explain this one to you, but Africans would understand what a traditional healer is. Please do Google it if you can, because I forgot to Google it for you. Yeah, let's leave it there. And muti, basically, it is a concoction of herbs as well as other stuff to heal a person or to give them luck, I suppose. It's just African traditional stuff, guys. William Nkuna then told the people that the rest of Francis Rasuge's body is dumped in a location only he and his traditional healer, Phineas Kudumela, knows. During cross-examination, William Nkuna denied that he ever made a statement like that to anybody, that he had killed and dismembered Francis Rasuge's body together with his traditional healer. Shortly afterwards, a 68-year-old Phineas Kudumela was arrested on suspicion of having involved in the disappearance of Francis Rasuge. Nkuna claimed that he and Phineas had a decade-long relationship. Phineas, understand, he denied having any friendship with William Nkuna. He said that all of his clients, he treats them equally. He has no favorite. He has none of them that are close to him. The only close relationship he has with his clients are to do whatever they ask him to do, and it ends there. He does not have any special relationship. He doesn't have any special friendship with either of his clients. William Nkuna is lying, and he would prove it. The police would get criticized on how they handled the entire Phineas Kudumela case. The police said that they interrogated Phineas Kudumela within the bounds of the law, but it was proved that that was not true, because Phineas Kudumela sued the Minister of Police for 500,000 rand for having been tortured by the police and forced him to say things that did not exist. He felt humiliated, and he felt that he needed to sue the Minister of Police for the way that the police treated him. The court agreed with Phineas Kudumela that he was indeed unfairly treated, he was indeed interrogated outside the bounds of the law, and the Minister of Police had to pay 500,000 rand to Phineas Kudumela. And of course, Phineas was let free because it showed that he had no connection or links to the disappearance of Francis Rasuge. All that William Nkuna was doing, he was just trying to delay this entire process as long as he could. So the prosecution, with tail between their legs, had to come to the public and apologize for the way that Phineas was treated and also withdrew all charges against him. So on the 3rd of March 2005, the state had no other choice but to drop the murder case against William Nkuna and the disappearance of Francis Rasuge. However, the state wanted William Nkuna behind bars, so the police had to go back to the drawing board and find other ways to find Francis Rasuge. They even went as far as taking advice from mediums as well as other traditional healers. One particular traditional healer had a dream and told the police that Francis Rasuge's body is buried in William Nkuna's garage. And so the police wasted no time, went to court and applied for a search warrant, and it was served on William Nkuna at 5:30 a.m. and they excavated his entire garage. Unfortunately, they did not find Francis Rasuge there. The police, of course, were disappointed, but they continued with the investigation, trying to find Francis Rasuge's whereabouts. However, a few weeks later, this is 3 weeks after Nkuna was released, the police re-arrested him for fraud. Remember, he had used Francis Rasuge's ATM card after she had gone missing? That is what the police started charging him for, and they labeled it as fraud. So while the police were busy investigating the disappearance of Francis Rasuge, one eyewitness did come forward and he identified William Nkuna as the man that came after him at the ATM to withdraw money. In June 2005, a search warrant was issued on William Nkuna at his home in Temba, Hammanskraal. In the house, they were searching for ATM receipts and they were also looking for any other evidence that it was William Nkuna that was withdrawing from Francis Rasuge's bank account. That also including that distinctive shirt that he was wearing that particular day at those ATMs. The police said they looked everywhere for the shirt, everywhere, and they could not find it. However, William Nkuna did something very strange. He told the police, the detective that was busy searching his home, that if you are looking for the shirt you're talking about, it's in the laundry basket. The police was shocked, was like, what? Indeed, when they checked the laundry basket, there was the shirt. That distinctive shirt that was seen on an ATM CCTV footage. They struck gold. Indeed, it was William Nkuna who was busy withdrawing money from Francis Rasuge's bank account after she had disappeared. So the police could not state in the fraud case about the murder of Francis Rasuge. So they just focused on the fraud charge on its own and took it to the National Prosecuting Authority for them to work their magic. Somehow they wanted to use the fraud case in bringing in the murder of Francis Rasuge. So William Nkuna was prosecuted and convicted for fraud, illegally withdrawing money from Francis Rasuge's bank account without her consent. The fraud trial gave the state enough evidence that William Nkuna also killed Francis Rasuge. Hence, he was making those withdrawals. The state told the court once again that William Nkuna, now that he's convicted of fraud, he knew very well that the reason why he was illegally withdrawing money from Francis Rasuge's bank account was because he knew for a fact that Francis Rasuge was no longer coming back. On the 2nd of April 2005, William Nkuna was served with an indictment for the murder of Francis Rasuge. William Nkuna's murder trial was to start on the 1st of August 2005. Unfortunately, he did not pitch the disrespect. William Nkuna himself seemed to have disappeared into thin air. So the court issued a warrant of arrest. About a week later, William Nkuna handed himself over to the police. And of course, he was arrested and then he was taken to his trial. Francis Rasuge's family testified against William Nkuna. They said that William Nkuna was extremely abusive to Francis Rasuge from the moment that he met her while she was still in high school up until the day on the 27th of August 2004 when she disappeared. She was 27 years old at that time. So I'm like thinking, oh my goodness, this relationship has been going on for a very long time. Since the time she was in high school, a teenager, and to the point where she was 27 years old, and the relationship was on and off, up until that day when William basically beat up Francis Rasuge so bad that she felt, you know what, this is it. It basically broke the camel's back. Finally, she broke up with him. Francis Rasuge's family found themselves between a rock and a hard place. In one hand, they wanted to know what happened to their child. On the other hand, they were afraid to find out that she's no longer alive. However, they wanted justice at the end of the day. And on the 10th of October 2005, William Nkuna was found guilty without a body of his victim of the murder of Francis Rasuge. Judge Ronald Hendricks sentenced William Nkuna to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole. Justice was served, although a lot of people were very confused. How is this possible that you find a man guilty of murder without any substance, meaning without a body? Because South African criminal law is a substantive law. That means there needs to be substance, evidence brought before a court, and then that evidence, the law will be applied onto it to determine a verdict. And as a result, a legal precedent was set. So although the Rasuge family was happy with what had happened to William Nkuna being sentenced to life imprisonment, but they still wanted to know where the whereabouts of their child's remains. But William Nkuna will not give it up. He just went quietly to start serving his life sentence without telling the family where he had buried their daughter. So a few weeks after William Nkuna was sentenced, his friend came forward and told the police that he could lead them to Francis Rasuge's grave. The police wasted no time and said, okay, fine, take us there. Indeed, this man took the police to the burial site of Francis Rasuge. The police, of course, applied to the court to have the grave exhumed. And when the body was excavated and they opened the coffin, and voila, it was a body of an old woman who died years before Francis Rasuge went missing. So he was a bit confused as well, this man, like, who's this lady? Because I thought this is Francis Rasuge. And it ended there. So in 2012, William Nkuna's wife decides to sell the marriage home, and a new buyer buys the house and then decides, you know what, I don't like how the yard is designed. So he went and got himself a construction company to remove whatever it was in the yard so that he could decorate the yard the way he wanted. So the construction workers, while they were busy removing these two slabs of concrete in front of the yard, in between the two slabs of concrete, they discovered or uncovered human skeletal remains. Immediately, they called the police. The police came with the forensics, and the skeletons were taken to a laboratory where it was examined and they abstracted DNA. And indeed, the DNA came and confirmed that those skeletal remains were that of Francis Rasuge. So the Sangoma, or the traditional healer that had a dream about Francis's whereabouts in William Nkuna's garage, was a little bit close. If only they dug the front of the house, they would have found her body and prosecuted William Nkuna and sent him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. So then the police held a press conference to announce that they have found Francis Rasuge's remains, but they made a mistake. They did not inform the Rasuge the moment they found skeletons. And the moment when the DNA came back and confirmed that indeed the human skeletons were that of Francis Rasuge. Instead, The Rasuge found information via a journalist that was calling them to ask the family, how do you feel that your daughter is now found? They were shocked. They were shell-shocked. The police just brushed it off and say, oh, it was miscommunication. Maybe it was the Hammanskraal police station that had forgotten to alert the Rasuges, and that was it. The Rasuges did make sure that South Africans understood how disappointed and angry they were at the police for overlooking them and doing this behind their backs. Constable Francis Rasuge was laid to rest in an official police funeral. In 2012, a political party applied to the court to have the sentence of William Nkuna to have the word with a possibility of parole to without possibility of parole. I don't think that is going to work, and I never saw anything about whether the court did adhere to this, because the courts in South Africa are independent, number one. Number two, they do not get influenced by outside forces. So I think that political party was just trying to score a cheap political score, and the court probably just ignored it, which is a good thing, I think. However, I do agree that William Nkuna does not deserve to be free one day. So after the discovery of Francis Rasuge's remains in William Nkuna's yard, they decided to excavate the entire yard to check if there were any other bodies that William Nkuna had buried in his yard. Remember, I promised you guys that I was going to tell you what William Nkuna's career or business was, hence he was wealthy. It turns out that William Nkuna was a hitman for taxi owners. So if a taxi owner wanted somebody dead, they went to William Nkuna, who would go and kill this individual, and then he would get money from that. Hence, the entire community of Themba in Hammanskraal, they are fearful of William Nkuna, not because he's a businessman, but he's a murderer. So it turns out that in 2001, William Nkuna had a friend by the name of Ruben Kibani. Now, Ruben had left his home in the Northwest to go and visit William Nkuna. Unfortunately, he never returned home to date. So part of the excavation of his yard was to look for the remains of Ruben Kibini. Secondly, there was another woman that William Nkuna was involved with who disappeared. To date, she was never found. So part of the excavation was to look for her. So after the forensics checked the entire yard for any other remains of other human remains in his yard, they did not find anybody. It was only Francis Rasuge that was found buried in front of his door. And remember the old lady that they went and dug up her grave because William's friend said it was Francis Rasuge's grave? What's the story about that? The police tried to check if they can link William Nkuna with her body, but they came up with nothing. So the community of Themba allegedly started coming to the police anonymously to tell them stories of the things, heinous things that William Nkuna was committing in Themba. Like I said, he was a hired hitman to kill taxi drivers, to kill taxi owners that other taxi owners wanted dead. That was his career. One lady even went to the police and asked the police to reinvestigate the murder of her son, because her son's murder allegedly was linked to William Nkuna. Remember Desmond Nkonto? He suddenly died after William Nkuna was sentenced to life imprisonment. Nkonto, he fell ill one day and then he went home. His mother took care of him. Things got really worse and then he was admitted at hospital. Even the doctors were quite surprised at his condition because they could not really pinpoint what was wrong with him. 3 days later, Desmond Nkonto was dead, and his death was ruled as natural causes, even though the doctors did not know what killed him. And the interesting part about this, Desmond Nkonto was very healthy. So it made no sense to anybody that how is it possible that a healthy man would just drop dead? And there is no explanation what killed him. However, there is no proof that William Nkuna was linked in any way for the death of Desmond Mkhonto. So you would think this case ends there, right? No. In 2015, William Nkuna from behind bars, through his lawyer, told South Africans that no, the skeletal remains that were found in his yard were not that of Francis Rasuge, but someone else. So it is clear that William Nkuna was still trying to control the Rasuge family. He already held them at ransom for 8 years before the discovery of Francis Rasuge's remains. And he still wants to torture them some more by telling everybody that the human remains that were found in his yard was not that of Francis Rasuge. How ill is this man? Through his lawyer, William Nkuna told South Africa that he has a lot to tell. He has a story to tell, and that he was inviting any writer to partner with so that he could write his life story in a tell-all book. So as far as I'm aware, there is no William Nkuna book that was ever published. I even tried to check long and hard, and I came up with nothing. It is now 2021. I'm not sure if anybody adhered or heeded this call and went and partnered with William Nkuna. I'm not sure if they are currently writing this book, if at all, or will never hear all these things that he wants to say, especially about the disappearance of Francis Rasuge. William Nkuna was indeed a brute monster who killed Francis Rasuge and tortured her family for 8 years before her body was discovered. Well guys, that is it about the disappearance and murder of Francis Rasuge. It is indeed a solved case as far as I'm concerned. Well, thank you so much guys for watching my video. Please do consider subscribing to my channel if you have not subscribed, and don't forget to click the bell notification so that you get notified every time I upload a new video. If you like today's case, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to leave me a comment down below and let me know what you think. And I will definitely see you next time with a new video. Goodbye.